So I'll stop every once in a while to just ask questions and just make sure you guys are understanding. Around 5 a.m. on a warm Sunday morning in October 1953, my Aunt Belle left her bed and vanished from the face of the earth. When I heard her get up, I figured she was going outside to the toilet. Her husband, my Uncle Everett, told the story. So I dozed off back to sleep. When I came awake again, I'd say maybe a half hour had passed, and she wasn't back. So I says to myself, I reckon I'd better go check on Belle, see if she okay. So I did. Right, so a couple things you should be noticing. One thing you should be noticing is the actual dialect. So notice how this should be the word figured, right? Figured. This should be the word wasn't. He's saying wasn't. You see the word reckon, right? So you can notice the dialect of the people who live in this area is obviously different. It's almost like southern. So what happened to Aunt Belle? Anybody? Okay, more important. What something more important happened to her? What? Yeah, she vanished, right? So she completely disappeared, right? So that's kind of crazy. Her husband hears her get up, and now she's missing. So this is very strange, right? Um, if your wife just supposedly disappears, Uncle Everett, a coal miner, and Aunt Belle, along with their boy Woodrow, lived way far in the head of a long, isolated holler called Crooked Ridge, near the town of Coal Station, Virginia, where the Appalachians are steep and rugged. In those days, the roads were narrow and rocky, barely passable in bad weather. They had an old Ford, and that morning it was parked on the slope with the key in the ignition like always. Their nearest neighbors, the Sloanes, who lived almost a mile down the road, told the sheriff they hadn't seen or heard a thing out of the ordinary. Ford's a company that makes cars. When somebody ever says like an old Ford, what they mean is a truck. Okay, so if somebody says an old Ford, that's what they mean. According to Uncle Everett, Aunt Belle was barefooted, wearing only a thin nightgown. Her two pairs of shoes and all of her clothes were still in their rightful places. There was no evidence of foul play, so there's no like blood or anything. Something like that. No indication that she went traipsing off to somewhere else. Besides, there was no place to traipse unless she went over those wild hills in her nightclothes, barefooted. In that case, somebody surely would have noticed her on the other side. There were no fresh footprints anywhere, not even in the marshy place by the gate. No unusual sound heard by Uncle Everett or Woodrow, who was sleeping in the loft. Never before had anything like this happened in our county, and once the word got out, folks were fairly jolted out of their ruts. Right, so this phrase is basically saying that like people are kind of like really upset and like freaked out, right? So again, if some woman just disappears, that would be like really. Why, whoever heard tell a body vanishing into thin air, they said. Truth be known, some said, there's a corpse to be found in them woods somewheres. Others said there must have been somebody waiting down a road piecing the car she rode off with. If folks we've seen or heard a car up the hollow that morning, wouldn't they? Seems like they would, right? So there's all these like strange things about why this person should have probably been seen, right? They would find the body, or they would have heard something, right? So nobody did. Seems like they would. And the speculation went on. My mama, Love Ball Dotson, speech and drama teacher at Cole Station High School, and sister to the missing person, was plenty upset. In a Mountain Echo interview, she said it wasn't bad enough having her sister disappear like that without a trace. Oh no, people had to go running their mouths, making an already tragic situation worse. It was just too much, she said, too much. Granny and Grandpa Ball, Mom and Aunt Belle's parents, wanted to take Woodrow to live with them, but Uncle Everett wouldn't hear of it. The days and weeks passed with nothing new coming to light. This phrase, this is an idiom, which basically means like no new news. I say nothing new coming to light. That's what that means. When the weeks turned into months, the hill folk settled back into their humdrum lives, and Belle Prater became kind of a folk heroine, like Rose Conley in the song "Down in the Willow Gardens." In fact, somebody did write a song about the Scion Coal Station's main honky tonk, the Busy Bee, accompanied by a bluegrass band. But Mama double dared anybody to ever sing it in her presence. There are insinuations in it, she said. So remember that word insinuation is like a clue about what's um, what's going on. So these people made a song about um, the mother, and there's insinuations. So there's like bad things. So what bad things might they sing about the mom? There's probably like two things that I would probably say would be an insinuation. So if you were to guess, they're making a song about this woman who disappeared. What would be two things that they might say that would be bad? That would piss off the sister. Yeah, so her being murdered, right? Her being dead, that's probably a thing, right? What would be another thing that could have possibly happened to this woman being dead? Kidnapped, it's possible. What else might have happened to her? If a woman disappears without a trace, what possibly could happen to her besides dead, kidnapped? Yeah, she should have left. Who would she leave with? Yeah, right. So she probably could have left possibly with maybe like another man, right? So these are probably like things that these people might be singing about, right? So they're saying bad things. So maybe she left with another man. Maybe she's dead. Maybe she's kidnapped. Either way, anything that they're saying is probably upsetting this mom, right? Which is the sister. This is the sister. Uh, when Aunt Belle had been gone for 6 months, it was brought to our attention that Uncle Everett was wetting his whistle to the point of saturation every chance he got. What do you think wetting his whistle to the point of saturation every chance he gets? That means, you know? So this basically means wetting his whistle to the point of saturation is he's getting super drunk. Why is he getting super drunk? Yeah, he's depressed, right? So obviously his wife appears in the middle of the night. She's gone, and now he's just like, can't deal with it. Not a healthy environment for a young boy, my Granny Ball declared. So she insisted on taking Woodrow to her home, and this time there was no objection from Uncle Everett. So at first, the father was like, "Nah, you're not taking my kid." But now that he's like can't control himself anymore, the the kid's going to be living with his grandparents. Coal Station in the heart of the coalfields, as the local radio station WCSB. It was a dingy mountain town built at the convergence of Black River and Slide Creek. It was no more than a wide place in the road between hills. On the town's outskirts were the workyards where railroad cars loaded up coal from all over the county, carried it to points east and north. That's how Coal Station got its name. Coal Station had only two streets. They followed the lay of the land. There was Main Street, where all the businesses were located, running parallel to Black River. There was Resident Street, the only place around for miles where you could build a house without going up in a holler or hanging it off the side of a cliff. It ran parallel to Slide Creek. Resident Street was in fact the brightest spot in the county. And among the other nice houses, there was one in which I, Gypsy Arbutus Lee Master, lived with my mother and stepfather, Gordon Johnson, editor of the Mountain Echo. Anybody know what an editor does? What does an editor do? You hear that phrase before? Yeah, what are they editing usually? Yeah, so they can be yes, yeah, exactly right. So it's usually could be books. Most of the time, though, when you hear editor, it's like somebody who's like doing it for like a newspaper. Though, right? So the editor is the person. So somebody would write a news story, and then they hand it in, and the person who's like in charge of looking over whatever somebody else writes is like the editor. It's almost like a teacher for like journalists. So if I'm a news reporter or whatever, and I go write my story, I hand it in. The teacher or whatever for that journalist essentially would be the editor. He looks at it or she looks at it, and then she like makes corrections, sends it back. The person rewrites it, and then that's how it is. Our house was a modern one-story brick ranch, which white with white shutters and front porch, the only picture window in town. We had a telephone, two radios, a phonograph, a refrigerator, a stand-up freezer, and electric stove. So these things nowadays are like commonplace, but back in the day, these things would have been considered like luxuries. So does anybody know what a phonograph is? Phonograph. And it's not a picture; it's a photograph. No, you're thinking of photograph. That's not a T; it's an N. Phonograph. Yeah. So a phonograph is a record player, which some of you guys probably have never even seen record players before. So before all the technology that we have now, right? So if you go backwards in time, the nowadays everything that we have in terms of music is digital, right? So most of you guys probably listen either on like YouTube or like streaming services to listen to music. Um, Before that, there were things that were physical that actually contained the music that people would listen to for the most part, right? So there's been all kinds of different ones. So the most common physical thing that people were carrying were CDs that you guys might have seen. Before CDs, there were cassettes. Before cassettes, there were records, right? So the some people still have records, like DJs sometimes, right? So some yeah. So some people still have yeah. Yeah, so some people still use CD players, but the only people who really use records anymore are people who like are really into records or like DJs. But even DJs nowadays use digital, so they don't even need the actual physical records. So again, a phonograph, and again, phonographs actually were a little bit different too, in that, well, at least with the ones that they're probably talking about. Nowadays, when you want to hear music, you have something that's attached to a speaker that's powered. Phonographs, a lot of the times in the past, had like a speaker attached to it. All right, so they had that refrigerator, stand-up freezer, and electric stove. So again, these would have all been considered luxuries for your average person back then. Nowadays, everybody has these things. Next door to Granny and Grandpa Ball had the same conveniences in one of those big old white green Hutter stories, houses wrapped around porch on the both floors. Santiago, are you okay? Okay, well, stay focused. You're going to be sadder if you continue. So uh, they also had a television set where you could sometimes see one real fuzzy channel from Charleston, West Virginia. Again, so they got a TV. Again, the amount of technology that has changed from like the 1950s to now is like crazy. So nowadays, TV works a couple of ways. So some TV channels are working through physical cable lines. Some TVs are working through satellites. But back in the day, you had to have an antenna that basically would be used to catch signals off of these things, similar to like satellite, but like a much less um, positive. So it's hard to even explain what it looked like. But so like when I was growing up young, very young, we didn't have cable. Like everyone has cable now, or like thing for the most part. Or well, some people you guys use the internet for watching TV. But back in the day, you used to have to use like these two long poles that would come off the top of your TV. They were called antennas, and literally you would have to sit there and like turn the antennas so that they were facing in a certain direction. Otherwise, you could not see your picture. Even when you saw the picture, it was like fuzzy. So like literally, like the picture was like really cloudy and you couldn't see it. There's like little like white dots on the screen. It's hard to even like kind of explain. It's really really poor. Almost like see how some of you guys are blurring your screens. It was like crappy. Like, wasn't great quality. Couldn't see the screen. Yeah, even the 1950s would have been great. Yeah, so technology has just like jumped ridiculously. And again, if you even look at it in terms of just technology as a whole, uh, You go back to like the 19, yeah, so like you go back to 1900s, which is only 100 and what, 120 years ago, there was like nothing. So everything that you would consider as technology all came around, like everything. So it's kind of crazy how much things have progressed in literally like 2 or 3 generations. Right, so let's continue. Surrounding our two houses was a wide expanse of cool green grass, about 50 apple trees, which we call the orchard. What a wonder and joy to behold in the spring when they all bloomed. They were all also azaleas, pink and fuchsia, not to mention the lily bushes down by the creek and the wild dogwood. People walking by our houses would sometimes stop on the road and look like they couldn't believe their dad burned eyes. So something you should be noticing here: everybody really thinks that their house is beautiful. So they got a nice house, and not only do they have a nice house, but their house is surrounded by these things. What is a azalea or lily? What is that? What are those things? What is an azalea or a lily bush? Anybody know? Yeah, they're actually flowers, right? So basically, her house is surrounded by like these beautiful flowers. Okay, so people want to pass by her house and look at it. That was the general appearance of my world that spring when Woodrow came to us, everything fresh and bright, pink and white. So those are the flowers. Mama reminded me how privileged I was, how fortunate, and I didn't doubt her word one bit, except when a certain nightmare came to me. And I couldn't help feeling more plagued than privileged. It had something to do with a dead animal, and I would wake up sobbing or screaming. All right, so this girl is having a recurring nightmare. It's kind of important to come out of this life. She has this dream that she keeps having all the time about a dead animal, and she wakes up crying because of it. All right, it's kind of like key to the story. This is your first time seeing it. Even though Aunt Belle was Mama's sister, I'd seen very little of her in Woodrow my whole life. I had the idea from somewhere that there'd been some kind of rift between the two sisters years ago, but when I asked Mom about it, she said, "Of course not. We're close. We love each other." Right, so she hasn't seen her that much. So she thinks that there's some sort of beef between Aunt Belle and her mom. Still, I wondered. Woodrow lived up in the way at the head of the holler with his mother and father without any plumbing or even a refrigerator, and he and I had always gone to different schools. So if I say they don't have plumbing, what do they mean? If I say you have no plumbing in your house, what does that mean? Anybody? Yeah, pipes. What do the pipes do? Yeah, exactly. So you have no water in your house. What else does that mean you don't have? Well, they said they don't have a refrigerator, but you can have a refrigerator without pipes. But if they have no plumbing, they have no water. What else? No toilet, right? So they have to use the bathroom outside essentially. We're the same age, as I had turned 12 in November, and he had turned 12 sometime in January that year. We were the same size, 4 feet 10 inches, tall, 92 pounds, but we had practically nothing else in common that I knew of them. Woodrow was gawky and backward and wore hillbilly clothes that were hand me downs from his daddy and his daddy's brother Russell. Right, so something else very common in the past, right? So people would just like hand down clothing from sibling to sibling, right? So this is he's literally wearing his like um, father's clothes. Once, when we were about 10, I saw Woodrow, and his pants were too long and too big to the waist. So he had a rope tied around his middle to keep them up. So again, he's not going to wear a belt. He sure looked funny that day, and I think he felt self conscious too because it was my birthday, and I had on a frilly blue dress and black patent leather slippers. Another time when I saw him at Christmas, he had an oversized cap where you could pull the flaps down over your ears. He was proud of that ugly old thing. I'll tell you something else about Woodrow, though I really don't want to. He was cross eyed. Sometimes you could tell if he was looking at you, or you couldn't tell if he was looking at you or not. And he had to wear these really thick glasses. I couldn't wait to visit Woodrow that spring night when we moved in next door. I wanted to know if he had any secret knowledge or theories about what happened to his mother. It was a Friday, and I was in my blue jeans, parked on a stool in front of my dresser, while Mama plaited my blonde hair in two long pigtails, the way I liked to wear it when I had a chance to play. So this is actually something that's interesting to, that you should see. Kids only wore jeans when it was like playtime. So jeans never were considered like nice clothing, whereas now it's kind of like reversed, right? So people wear jeans as like nice clothing. Jeans were always considered like for work. It was the only way I could tolerate having her hair longer than the uncles. This girl has super long hair. Now don't you go over there and aggravate him about Aunt Belle, you hear me? Mama said. Gee whiz, I'm not a moron or I should hope not. He's been through a lot, and he deserves some consideration. Don't go pestering him to death. What doesn't the mom want him to talk about? Her to talk about? What doesn't the mom want? What doesn't the mom want? Yeah, about Aunt Belle, exactly. Mama giggled. Pester him. You make me sound like a cockroach. That's an example of a simile here. Mama giggled. Go on then, cheer him up. Tell him the eyeball joke. It's so funny, and you tell it so well. I swelled up a bit. It was known fact that I did tell good jokes. Mama patted me on the cheek, and we smiled at each other in the mirror. My mama was very beautiful. Everybody said so. She smelled good all the time, like Christmas candy, and her hair put you in a mind of one of those Halo shampoo ads. I slid off the stool, headed out the door. Tell him hey for me, and welcome, Mama called after me. It was a mystic twilight I found myself in for the first of many times that followed when I raced across our yards to go visit Woodrow. The apple trees sprinkled with tiny petals on me. The breeze whipped them up in their sweet aroma around me so that I was heady with a strange excitement as I entered the door, yelled hello to Granny and Grandpa, and galloped up the stairs to Woodrow's room in front of the house. His shaggy blond hair was hanging down from his eyes, and he kept tossing it to the side. He was putting his few pitiful belongings into a dresser drawer. In the middle of the bed was Grandpa's German Shepherd, who had no name but Dog. She was sweet, everybody loved her, but if Granny saw Dog sprawled in the middle of the bed, she would pitch a fit. Woodrow had some things to learn. Hiya, neighbor, I said, and I tossed a cherry jawbreaker to Woodrow. You guys know what jawbreakers are, right? Yeah, it's like candy. They still have them, which is kind of crazy. He caught it, then he looked at a piece of candy like it was pure gold. Joe Palooka, he said. We both unwrapped our jawbreakers and popped them into our mouths. I parked on the bed, started to pet Dog. She licked my hand, and I stretched behind her ears. She rolled over, stuck up her paws in the air like she was saying, scratch my belly, why don't you? So I scratched her belly, and one of her back legs began to jerk. The harder I scratched, the faster her leg went. You want to hear a joke, Woodrow? He said. Sure. He sat down on the bed beside me and Dog. There was this man, you see. He went into a beer joint and said to the barkeeper, I bet you a free beer I can bite my own left eyeball. The barkeeper just laughed and said, nobody can bite his own eyeball. It's a bet. So the man took out his left eyeball and he bit it and he popped it right back into place. It was a glass eye, see? Well, everybody in the joint liked to die laughing, and the man drank his free beer. Then the man said to the barkeeper, I bet you another beer I can bite my right eyeball. But the barkeeper said, impossible. You have two glass eyes? It's a bet. So the man promptly took out his false teeth and then he bit his right eyeball with them. That joke worked every time. I thought Woodrow would split. While he was finishing up his belly laugh, I was trying to figure out how I was going to bring up the subject of his mother without playing the part of the cockroach. Pestering was something I didn't like to do when it could be avoided, but I told myself maybe it really could be avoided. So I shrugged away all of Mama's admonitions and I blurted it out. Now, Woodrow, about your mama. You must have some idea, some theory about what happened to her, don't you? Well, he wiped his nose in his shirt sleeve and didn't say anything anymore. I tried again. You know, grown-ups can be stupid sometimes, can't they? They overlook the most important things. Woodrow nodded slightly in agreement, but he still didn't say anything. I mean, Woodrow, don't you know something or notice something that nobody else noticed? Isn't there something you never told anybody, figuring they'd laugh at you because you're a kid, you know? Yeah, Woodrow said suddenly. There was something. He turned his cross-eyed blue eyes on me, and I nearly swallowed my jawbreaker because I didn't expect him to deliver so soon. What? I said. I tried to dog Daddy out, but he wouldn't listen, Willow said. Then he went to his chest of drawers and he pulled out a book. I don't want anybody to know about this gypsy. I'll tell you if you promise to be my best friend, he said. I'd be honored, Woodrow. I said genuinely. He grinned all over, showing great white teeth and a tongue stained with the cherry candy. Carefully, he placed the book in my hands. 1,000 beautiful poems were the words there. This book was a gift to Mama from Grandpa Paul when she graduated from high school. She loved it. For the last few days before she disappeared, there was a poem she read over and over. She memorized it. She clutched the blue book close like this. Woodrow reclaimed the book and demonstrated by holding it close to his heart. And she took out the most wonderful expression around her eyes, and she looked out the hills. No, beyond the hills. Beyond the earth even. And she said this poem. It's on page 88. He handed the book to me, and I quickly flipped to page 88. I read, "The breeze at dawn has secrets to tell you. Don't go back to sleep. You must ask for what you really want. Don't go back to sleep. People are going back and forth across the door sill, where the two worlds touch. The door is round and open. Don't go back to sleep." "What does it mean, Woodrow?" I whispered. "Don't you see?" he said. Then he leaned in close and ran his fingers around the words as he read. "The breeze at dawn has secrets to tell you." She knew. I knew she knew something was going to happen at dawn. "But what?" I said. Then it goes on to say, don't go back to sleep." So she didn't. She got up and went outside. "What happened, Woodrow? What then?" "I don't know," he said. I don't know." "That's all?" I said, disappointed. "Yeah," he said sadly. "That's all I know." She got up at dawn, went outside because she expected something to happen. Nobody ever saw her again. He closed the book and he clutched it. "But it's all here," he whispered mysteriously. "The secret is hiding in the lines of this poem." I'm just going to read a little short. Chapter 2. "Why'd you name her Belle?" I shouted at Granny the next morning. I shouted because she and Grandpa were both hard, but too stubborn to work here. So a lot of shouting went on in the house. We didn't even notice it anymore, and everybody who came to visit picked up the habit. "Belle's a perfectly good name," Granny said. But we were in our big, breezy yellow kitchen finishing up a birthday cake. He and Mama were gone to Abington to see some of the Porter's kin, and Grandpa and Woodrow were buying clothes. I was sure. I was glad of that. Again, what was up with Woodrow's clothes before? What kind of clothes did Woodrow have? Got to be paying attention. What kind of clothes did Woodrow have? No one remember. Yeah, he was wearing very loose clothes. Why were they loose? Yeah, they were too big. They were hand-me-downs, right? So if you ever get like clothes from like an older brother or sister or whatever, or parent, they might not fit perfectly because you have to be very dress for it. Belle Ball is not a perfectly good name, I yelled. Didn't you know kids make fun of things like that? Granny placed a tiny blue rose on top of the cake. The idea was that she would be the belle of the ball, Granny said, and gazed out the window with a hunger look in her eyes. We always hoped that she would be. Was she? I said. No, dear. Your mamma was the belle of every ball. She was near about the prettiest thing on the planet, and poor Belle. So here you're kind of noticing something that's kind of important to the story a little bit. Belle, the girl who's missing, is not very beautiful. Her name is Belle. The Love, which is the other girl's name, the gypsy's mom, is beautiful. Granny sniffed a little, then abruptly came back to the present, so she's reflecting on the past. There now. So soon you put the candles on, we're done. It's all right. A big cake. What about poor Belle? I said. Do what? Aunt Belle. I hollered, and poor Belle what? Granny sighed, wiped her hands in her apron, and she sat down at the table. She was plain gypsy, and that seemed to be the most important thing in the world to her. Her looks. Oh, she wanted so much to be beautiful like love. So here you're seeing something that was like a little bit of drama between the two sisters. The gypsy, um, I'm sorry, not gypsy. Belle is not very beautiful. She's very plain looking, but Love was very beautiful. Your mama was, and still is, a natural beauty. She popped out of bed in the morning looking like a committee soap girl. And Belle had to work hard at her looks. And then still not have much to show for her efforts. So again, she wasn't very pretty. What about boys? They said. Granny didn't answer, and I wondered if she heard me. Boys. Did Mama get all the boyfriends too? Still, Granny didn't answer, and again she looked out the window, where it seemed like she could see past the shore on the movie screen. Granny, oh, I heard you, I heard you. I'm not hard to hear, you know. I was just debating with myself whether I ought to hear this or not. But I reckon you're old enough to understand. Just don't repeat any of this to Woodrow. It would only make him sad. So now the grandmother's going to tell her a secret. Okay, I said, propping my elbows on the table in my 2 minutes. I wouldn't hurt Woodrow's feelings. Well, Belle couldn't on to hold on to a boyfriend to save her soul. Every boy who walked in the house was pulled to love like she was one a powerful magnet, and he was just a little old weak a piece of scrap metal. So this is actually a simile and a metaphor. So now you're seeing even bigger drama between the sisters. So anytime Belle would find a boy that liked her, what would happen? Exactly right. So this causes lots of drama, right? You go bring your boyfriend home, or he brings a boy home, and then they see your sister who's gorgeous, and they don't want nothing to do with you. Then Love went away to college, to Radford to learn to be like a teacher like her. For the first time, Belle had boyfriends of her own, right? So now, because her sister leaves to go away to college, now she doesn't have to worry about it anymore. So now she's able to get boyfriends. She went to dances and parties and took bloom in her cheeks. She was almost pretty and having the time of her life. Then along came Amos. Amos, I sputtered as one of my elbows fell off the table. Amos home. Amos Lee Master, your daddy. My daddy was Aunt Belle's sweetheart first, so now this is super drama. So this girl Gypsy is learning that her father was going out with her aunt before her mother. So obviously this is pretty big drama. Right? So imagine you find that she's just finding this out, right? So she's finding out, and again, we don't know anything about her father yet, but all we found out is that her father, before her mother, um, was with her aunt. Yes, he was. He came riding over Cold Mountain on a black horse one Saturday in January. Big as life. Never forget it. Dark and rugged as the hills. Straight he was in his shadow. Nobody in Coal Station ever saw the lakes of the Absolute Master. So now basically the grandmother's saying like this her father was like super handsome and like that was cool. Suddenly without warning I felt hot tears well up in my eyes and my chin started to quiver. Why is Gypsy crying? Why is Gypsy crying? Exactly right. Exactly. So she's upset now. She's like, wait, what a second. Wait, my aunt who's disappeared, who nobody knows where the heck she is, um, used to go out with my aunt, and she's now gone. Grandma wasn't noticing me. She was watching my daddy come over Monday and cold day. So she's like daydreaming about the past. Said he came open to open up a hardware store, but he did more than that. He started the Civic League, and their main job is distributing food to the hungry. He also started the volunteer fire department. So again, obviously her father was a big shot. Why he was like a knight in shining armor. That's a simile. Every girl in town went mental, but it was our Belle who turned his head. So strangely, right? Every single girl in town was all about this guy. And who is she interested in? Belle. Okay, I think you guys all kind of know what's obviously going to end up happening. He was bound to marry her. Oof. Did he marry her? Obviously not. He said on that he said on that first day he hit Coal Station, they were so happy together. I never saw her sparkle like she did that spring. So now, obviously, the Aunt Belle, who's missing, like her life was like on top of the world. They said, I never saw her sparkle like she did. Our Belle had found her life. I said to your grandpa, she's happy now. Yeah, until love comes. Joel could see those things coming, so that's her grandfather, obviously. I never could, but I should have in that case. I guess I thought fate could not be so unkind, but it was. So the grandmother never realized what was going to happen. Granny's voice trailed away. I swallowed hard 3 times before I could trust my own voice again. What happened? I asked. The rest is history. It was like fireworks, as they said in the movies. The minute Amos and Love laid eyes on each other, so obviously, Amos comes around, Love comes back from school. We were both quiet then. I didn't want to hear any more. Aunt Belle, I said, I wish I had known you better, and I knew what happened to you. Did you buy Porter a birthday present, Gypsy? Granny changed the subject. So Porter was her stepfather. So if there's a stepfather, we still don't know what happened to the father. We just know that there's a stepfather. No, did you? Don't I always? You should have bought him something too. Why? He's not my daddy. Hush, you devilish youngin. No, he's not your daddy, but Amos Lee Master's dead now, so now we found out he's dead. Nobody can help that. You're treating Porter like you don't want to bring your like you won't. Treating Porter like that won't bring your daddy back. I don't treat him bad, I said, and I ran my fingers around the edge of the cake plate to catch the frosting drippings. Not as bad as I'd like to, I mumbled. She popped the frosting around. So yeah, she's not being very nice to her stepfather. Didn't buy him a gift and doesn't really treat him well. You must, you just must give him the silent treatment all the time. Actually got caught up and kept the dirty cake tins in the sink. You know it hurts his feelings. It was true. Funny thing was, I used to like Porter Batson fine when he was just the fella down the street who ran the newspaper. He was funny and friendly. Then he married my mama 2 years ago, and I stopped liking him. Every time I saw him getting there with my dad, I used to sit reading the paper by the picture window. I wanted to shout at him, "Move your carcass out of my dad's place." But instead, I didn't say anything, sometimes for days on end. Even if he asked me a point blank question, I wouldn't answer him. Yeah, it was wicked of me. I enjoyed seeing that bewildered look come over his face. I didn't know how to react. Porter never had kids of his own. I think he expected me to be like a puppy, playful, cute, adoring. But I could tell him one thing right now. I was no puppy. And he was in for a real sorry time of trying it to be Gypsy Lee Master's stepfather. Here comes your grandfather in Woodrow, Granny said, looking out the window. I best get some lunch ready. Now you kind of see a lot of background information about these characters. Porter is the stepfather. She's not treating him very well. We found out that Amos was dating the Aunt Belle who disappeared before. We found out that Amos is dead. Um, and lots of interesting information about what's going on. We find out that her mom is super beautiful. We also found out that this girl has like this super long hair. All right, so what I want you guys to do now first is you're gonna go on Socrative. Let me actually, I think I only tap this screen. If I'm gonna forget the whole book, like that book was. Well, you can look back into it. You have the story.